Hey there. Just want to go over a couple of things when you're doing or when the dealership is doing a pre-delivery inspection on a bike. It's a lot more involved than just slapping the battery in there and dumping some gas in the tank. Typically, you're going to make sure the battery's charged, which is easy these days because you just throw them on a charger. A long time ago, we'd have to fill the batteries up with acid and charge them a little bit, keep checking the specific gravity, and do that. So, simple, but if you're doing, just say 400 batteries a year, your entire shop's going to stink of battery acid most of the year, unless you have an extraction system, which we don't have anymore and haven't for a long time had to do that, or they don't have to do it at the dealership. So, like I said, PDI, you're going to get the bike, and it's all put together, and you're going to want to adjust the bars. We'll get to that. First, the way I do it, I grab every tool I need, wrenches, and start at the front of the bike. Typically, I start on the front right and work my way all the way around the bike. Checking all the fasteners. Important, all of them are important, but engine mounts, foot peg mounts, exhaust, all that stuff. Like I said, pretty much every fastener on the bike. Also, you're going to do the air pressure in the tires. The way we did them a long time ago, we'd actually do this before the first service. We'd go ahead and lube the clutch, adjust the clutch, lube the throttle cables, adjust the throttle cables. Now, on the throttle cables, what often happens a lot of the times, they never actually adjust them correctly. So we had a local dealer that sold more bikes than we did, but we had a better service department. So we would usually get their first services at our shop to do the first service, because they're basically volume bike sellers and bad service department, etc. So any bike we get from them, the throttle cables, we've had them as bad as throttle only opens halfway. So you would adjust the throttle cables, and automatically bikes got more power. So, and the customer, they've already got 500,000 miles, whatever, on the bike, and they get the bike back, and now it's got a hell of a lot more power. So there's that. Clutch adjustment, like I said, lube the cables, adjust the clutch, adjust the primary chain. This is all stuff you're checking on the PDI, or you should be. A lot of places don't. They basically slap batteries in it, check the oil, and if they ride them at all. I always made the point that everybody in the shop, when you're doing a PDI, you ride the bike at least 8 to 10 miles. So you're going to go around it, do everything on the bike, adjust the belt, chain, whatever, top off the brake fluid if it needs it, and adjust the bars and the levers. Now, when you have I had it set up was when you work with the sales department. So if the guy's putting any accessories on the bike, exhaust or grips or chrome doodads, baubles, whatever, knickknacks, you put those on at PDI when you're setting the bike up. But you always instruct the sales department that when they deliver the bike, that you bring the customer back to the service department, and you go to the guy, whoever set up the bike, and you have the customer sit on the bike so you can adjust the levers up or down or wherever they want them. It's more comfortable, so they're not hitting the levers when they go to grab the clutch or the brake. Setting the bars forward or back, or whichever way they need to go. Same way with the shift lever and the rear brake lever. You're setting it to where it's easy for the customer, whatever shoes they're wearing. And usually instruct the sales staff that whenever's picking the bike up, they should be wearing their riding gear, so you can be sure that some guy wearing loafers that comes in, it ain't going to be the same as when he's got his riding boots on. and it's all adjustable there. You know, you can tell him to come back when you after he picks the bike up, or when he goes to actually pick the bike up, to adjust the levers on it, or adjust the shift lever and the brake lever, whatever shoes he's using. Axle bolts, front and rear. Pinch bolts on the front especially, because a lot of times they can have that stuff off. That, I mean, they've got it down pretty good. Most of them are pretty decent, but I always like to crack the pinch bolts on the front axle. Bounce front end up and down a couple of times to make sure that the forks are centered on the axle, and then tighten it back up. Exhaust mounts, important. Certain bikes more than others. Like I said, belt or chain adjustment needs to be right on. And a couple other things. After you get all that stuff done, you've gone around the bike, you've tightened the turn signals, the tail light, all, and I'm talking, you know, you just fly through this stuff. You know, you got wrenches. You already know in your head what size it takes. You just throw a wrench on it. Make sure it's snug down or tight or torqued, depending on what it is. I always had guys do the sprocket bolts and brake disc bolts too. That's part of the PDI. Always torque those and make sure they're good. Idle speed, important. You know, not really adjustable anymore since they came out with fuel injection. You still need to check hot and cold start. So cold start, you know, you're going to start it up. Make sure it fires right up, and it's going to be high idle, and then it's gradually going to come down. And make sure that's all right. Shock bolts. Charging system is a big one. Charging system, you're going to throw a meter on there and make sure that it's charging where it should be, and that the cutoff, it isn't going over 14.7 volts or 15. Just I always do 14.7. Now, if it's 14.8, 14.9, that's fine, as long as you watch the meter and it actually cuts back. So you're not just going to rev it up until it hits 14.7 and let it go. You're going to hold it there. If it goes up 14.8, 14.9, and then cuts back, you'll see it go from 14.9 to 14.8 or 14.7 to 14.6. That means the cutoff is working right, the voltage cutoff. If it keeps climbing, it ain't no good. So either bad ground on the voltage regulator, or bad voltage regulator, one or the other. Key fobs, all that stuff. Now, one thing I'll point out, and I actually had a guy do this in the shop, and these things, you don't know how long they sat since they had them at the factory and they already put oil in them, or hopefully they put oil in them. So when you do it, you're going to want to pull the oil tank cap off, start the bike up, and watch, make sure oil's returning to the tank. Now, what happened in this case, this was on a Buell, and for whatever reason, mechanic didn't check it. He just assumed that it was in there. Bike will fire up and it's got oil pressure. It had a little bit of oil pressure. It had oil pressure according to the light, but put gas in it. He's only starting it up for a couple of minutes to check the charging system, and then sticks a dealer tag on the bike and takes off down the road and makes it about, I think he made it about 4 miles before it locked up, because it had, when we checked it, it had less than a quart of oil in the bike. But he brings it back, and he didn't bring it back. We had to go get it because it locked up tight. So I told him, put it up on the lift and start tearing it down. So it gets down, can't get the cylinders off because the pistons are seized up. I mean, seized. Finally get them off, had to beat them off of there. Yeah, they had to beat them off. Had to get the cylinders off, but once they're off, the rods were super tight. And, look down in the engine there, and the big end of the rods are blue. That's bad. So at that point, we can't repair that bike and sell it, not as a new bike. So what ended up happening was It was on Buell M2, cycle M2, yeah, whichever one that is. So in this case, the guy ended up buying the bike at a discount. I don't know what kind of deal that had worked out with him, but he ended up getting the bike and had a used set of rods in the back that were straight and honed straight, and fit a new crank pin and fit new rods and new rod bearings to this thing, and ended up putting high compression pistons in there and a couple other things. But that's what happens when you don't check. You assume that the oil's good, so you're always going to want to check that. Now, what happens is you go through all these setup procedures, and it takes, I mean, you can do a PDI in under an hour. It's really pretty quick. But you're going to go out and ride the bike and make sure everything's cool with it. Like I said, some dealerships, we always delivered ours that had 8 to 10 miles on them. And really, that's what you want to do for the customer. Better customer service that way. I don't know what they charge for PDIs anymore, but it's a big deal doing them. Like I said, it's not just slapping the battery in there and pumping gas in it, riding it, because sometimes you do have stuff that's off. I've had them where back to the front axle. I've had them where the front axle is pulled to one side and it sticks one of them forks, or in the worst cases, it lines the caliper up against the rotor, and you can warp a rotor like that. Well, you don't want that shit happening to somebody's bike when it's their first bike and they're just learning how to ride, because they're not going to know how to react to that thing. Or worse yet, it locks up totally and slams them on the ground. But usually loose bolts are a good one. You're going to want to make sure the mirrors are where they can see them and all the lights work, and brakes perfect. And really, that's about it. Good PDI is important. And that's about it for that. Hope everybody has a good, happy New Year. And take care. Thank you.